The environment has an important role in improving human resources. To support facilities and accessibility become a key to support people for getting the achievement, including people with disabilities. Interpreting the special needs with ensuring all of the facilities in well prepared, which is ready to use by people with disabilities, so the mobility within faculty will be more convenient. We realized that the facilities need to be supported for people with disabilities. Therefore, the service will be prioritized to build awareness in developing an inclusive environment for civitas academic of Universitas Negeri Surabaya. In academics, we also open enrollment for students with disabilities through special admission with a talented and potential skill which is according to their interest in various program studies. From the vocational program, undergraduate, magister, and postgraduate. UNESA continues to ensure that students with disabilities could expertise their hard skill and soft skill from an expert advisor. Achievement is not the only goal, but we believe with achievement will give a change to improve student skills. Supporting various programs for disability awareness, UNESA has the Center Study and Services for Disability, which is focusing on 3 programs. Researches, the Student with Disability Services, and the Inclusive Community.
Perkenalkan, saya Aden. Saya jurusan PKK. Saya prodinya S1 Tata Boga 2019B.
Waktu itu Mas Aden kan pernah menang lomba PSLD UNESA tahun 2018 kalau nggak salah, dia kelas 2 SMK, juara 3, main keyboard waktu itu. Setelah itu diundang Bapak Rektor untuk mengisi acara PSLD juga. Saya cari-cari informasi, alhamdulillah ada jalur inklusi itu pertama kali kalau nggak salah dibuka untuk secara resmi. Ya lewat PSLD lagi dibantu, kemudian dengan syaratnya kan punya prestasi tingkat kota ya. Alhamdulillah dari PSLD 1 itu pas waktunya bayar nggak bisa bayar, ditolak. Ternyata 2 hari kemudian diberitahu bahwa dapat beasiswa. Masya Allah, saya sampai nangis, saya tengah hari itu nangis. Soalnya bersyukur banget gitu ya bisa masuk UNESA. Memang kan anak autis tuh kalau udah obsesi kan mau gitu ya, terus dia mau masak, bukan pinter banget tuh enggak mau, dia tuh tertarik, terus diajarin masak itu nggak nolak.
Paling sering masak sup sama gorengan, cup sama pedas manis. Masakan yang diajarin dosen itu makanan yang dari India, Pakistan, dan Bangladesh. Nggak ada kesulitan. Jadi entrepreneur dan juru masak. Yang paling saya suka itu jualannya untung.
Untuk wirausahanya ya mudah-mudahan bisa menjadi bekal dia untuk mandiri di kemudian hari kelak. Jadi sekarang pun sudah mandiri, cuman nanti kalau sudah lepas kuliah kan lebih fokus di jualannya. Mudah-mudahan kuliahnya lancar, 2 tahun lagi ada dari support dari UNESA juga, kemudian dari dosen-dosennya, mudah-mudahan paling lancar bisa lulus tepat waktu.
Globalization encourages Universitas Negeri Surabaya to connect and reconnect with UNESA's partners with different stakeholder coping education, government, private sector, and non-governmental organization. UNESA has committed to strengthen its partnership with various partners, evidenced by the increase in targets and achievements from year to year. What is more, UNESA welcomes potential collaboration with new partners to strive for its excellence in education. To improve quality, we also bridge international mobility for educators and students. UNESA supports every potential of the UNESA academic community through international scholarship programs to add global insight. Various international programs are also designed to facilitate UNESA students and international students not only to interact and get to know each other, but also to exchange perspectives for wider collaboration.
Our university strategic plan for the next 5 years focuses on internationalization of the institution. By 2021, we hope we become a recognized regional education university. We have implemented some program for the internationalization. Recently, we have obtained international accreditation for science education and engineering education clusters. We are now working on the other international accreditation from reputable international agencies. In terms of academic forums, this year we are hosting some international conferences and academic forums. In the respective fields of our faculties, from these international conferences, we open opportunities for international research collaboration and publication with bigger audiences. In addition, for research collaboration, we encourage professors and researchers at our university to collaborate with researchers from other countries, especially with institutions which have had MOUs with our university. We believe that the emerging issues we face are too big to solve alone. Collaboration is the key to cope the problems and challenges to elevate the roles of the higher education to bigger audience. Some potential to initiate for international collaboration, including student and teacher mobility, international internship programs, joint research, publication and conferences, and scholarship management for international students. UNESA is committed to enhancing our global collaboration for better future to build sustainable development for our community and unity. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bapak Ibu, mohon izin acara akan segera kami mulai. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang terhormat Wakil Rektor Bidang Perencanaan dan Kerjasama Bapak Dr. Sujarwanto MPD. Yang kami hormati para narasumber Bapak Profesor Dr. Budianto, Profesor Kiran Shihi from Open University UK. Welcome to Universitas Negeri Surabaya. Olil Pekamalinen PhD from University of Jyväskylä from Finlandia. Profesor Joanna from Polandia. I'm much obliged for your time. Yang kami hormati jajaran Wakil Dekan Bidang Akademik Universitas Negeri Surabaya, Wakil Direktur Bidang Akademik Vokasi, seluruh teman-teman mahasiswa UNESA yang hadir di lantai 11 Gedung Rektorat Universitas Negeri Surabaya, maupun Bapak Ibu dan teman-teman yang menyaksikan melalui live YouTube official UNESA. Puji syukur atas kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, karena atas berkat dan rahmatnya lah kita bisa bersama-sama berada di lantai 11 ini untuk mengikuti International Webinar Best Practices of Inclusive Education in Many Countries. Dan perkenankan saya Farah Manhila yang akan membuka acara pada hari ini. Dan untuk keberlangsungan acara pada hari ini, teman-teman sekalian, kami persilahkan untuk bisa menundukkan kepala sejenak. Kita berdoa kepada Tuhan Yang Maha Esa agar acara pada hari ini dapat berlangsung lancar dan memberikan kebermanfaatan bagi kita semua. Berdoa disilahkan. Berdoa dicukupkan. Acara selanjutnya menyanyikan lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Hadirin dimohon berdiri. Hadirin disilakan duduk kembali. Acara selanjutnya ialah pembukaan yang akan disampaikan langsung oleh Wakil Rektor Bidang Perencanaan dan Kerjasama kepada yang terhormat Bapak Dr. Sujarwanto MPD, disilahkan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. His Excellency Prof. Kiran Sehi from the Open University UK, Prof. Joanna from Pedagogical University Poland. How are you, Prof. Joanna? Professor Olli Pekka from Helsinki University, Finlandia. Vice Dean Academic Affairs of UNESA, our students from all faculties. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings to the honorable official from Negeri Surabaya, distinguished guests, keynote speakers, and all participants. First of all, I would like to welcome you all today's webinar. Welcome to UNESA. Currently, UNESA has ranked among top 20 units in Indonesia and one of the leading universities on teacher development program in the eastern part of Indonesia. UNESA has been well known for the excellent development and significant contribution on 3 areas, namely arts and culture, disability development, and sports. Therefore, today's webinar will specially focus on the disability-related theme in specific inclusive education practice. Indeed, inclusive education has been on the center of discussion among scholars and experts in the education field. The fulfillment of inclusive education in the acceptance of the rights for education for every person, including people with disabilities. As the leading university on education development, we are proud to hold today's webinar to provide insight for teachers, researchers, and stakeholders on how to implement inclusive education successfully. Therefore, I would like to deliver my appreciation for all speakers. Thank you so much for our long-time partner, Prof. Kiran, saya from the Open University UK, Prof. Joanna from Pedagogical University Poland, Prof. Olli from Helsinki University, Finland, and Prof. Budianto from our own campus UNESA. Before we start the webinar, UNESA opens widely for the opportunity to initiate and establish partnerships. Kindly visit our website and please feel free to contact us. Without further ado, I open today's webinar. Hopefully, the objectives of today's webinar could be achieved. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mr. Sujarwanto, for the opening speech. And now we are going to the next section. Is a main section of this event, International Webinar Best Practices of Inclusive Education in Many Countries. And now I would like to invite our moderator, Muhammad Nurul Ashar, SPD, MED. Time is yours.
Cek. Baik, terima kasih Farah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang. Yang saya hormati Bapak Wakil Rektor Bidang Perencanaan dan Kerjasama, Bapak Dr. Sujarwanto MPD, Yang saya hormati Bapak Ibu Wakil Dekan, matur nuwun sudah hadir di International Webinar. Yang saya hormati Profesor Kirin Sihai, Profesor Budianto, serta dua narasumber kita yang join via online. So, good afternoon Profesor Joanna. Are you there?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am here in Poland, in Krakow. Thank you very much for invitation.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Profesor Joanna. Bapak Ibu sekalian, rekan-rekan sekalian, kita akan memulai sesi international webinar. Nanti akan ada 4 pemateri kita. 2 sudah hadir secara langsung, 2 akan hadir secara daring. Nah, kita akan mulai dengan pemateri daring terlebih dahulu, yaitu Profesor Joanna Kosewska dari Universitas Pedagogik Polandia. Alright, Professor Joanna, could you hear my voice clearly?
Yes.
Yes. Professor, so this is your time to present your sessions, so I'll give it to you. You have a maximum 30 minutes to present, so please make sure that I will have a time to translate your presentation. Right,
okay, thank you very much. Let me know whether, wait, sorry. Okay, but let me know whether my presentation is visible for the audience.
Yes, it is clearly visible.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so we can go through. The topic I present for the students and for the staff of Indonesian universities, I'm very glad to present, is about teachers training for dealing with autistic students in inclusive education. But first of all, I would like to present a little bit about Polish school system, because we have a new situation after final and last reform. So briefly, I would like to present this issue and the support for autistic students related to this legal statement. And training of this for teachers. My university was involved in international project, and the result of this project seems to me and to my colleague very interesting. So I would like to share with you these findings. So first of all, let me interest you in some specific situation in Poland. That means that we have quite a good support for children with special educational needs from the early beginning of the developmental stage. Through the support at preschool level, up to the support at school level. School, that means for compulsory education, primary school, and as well as secondary school or high school. The problem is that the support is not intensive, or it is very difficult to get any support after finishing the period of compulsory education. So the problem is very important for adults. But today we are talking about inclusive education, so I can say that in Poland it is quite a good infrastructure at school. But the regulation has changed. So we are in the process of developing inclusive education. So the education for all students in the nearest local school, and it might be a little bit problematic because that means that each school, particular school in local environment, should be prepared to deal with different kind of special needs, and it might be a little bit difficult for teachers who are responsible not only for teaching subjects, so subjective teaching, but also for supporting special needs kids. But the problem is, I think that all over the world it's the same problem: how to deal and how to train teachers to be multi-specialists, to be responsible for very, very different kind of special needs and to deal with that, to support such children. But anyway, according to our last systematic reform of educational system, we have in Poland such four steps or levels of education. So the 1 year of compulsory preschool education is, as I said, compulsory. So it is for 6 and 7 years old students. Then we have a primary school. Nowadays it is 8 grades, and secondary or high school, it depends. Sometimes it is 3 years, vocational school are 3 years, lyceum are 4 years, and technical school are 5 grades. So it is differentiated. And then we have University of Tertiary Education. Also some students with special needs could attend. As we could follow the changes in educational system, I would like to point 3 or 2 very important issues that, according to the legal statement, as I said, we are going to organize the system for a school for all students, regardless their special needs or their health or functional problems. That means that we are going to individualize the teaching procedures, and that the support, psychological support, should follow the students and should be implemented in local school. That means that teachers should be not only teachers per se, but should be familiar with diagnosis, with identifying problems, identifying the possibilities or means how to deal with particular problems. They also should be familiar with methods, with instruments, and also are going to be responsible for intensive support just to get the best result for particular students. So I think that nowadays teachers' situations, teachers' obligations are very, very wide and even it's my personal comment that is really impossible to deal with these all duties as a one person. So it should be organized, the support should be organized at school as the teamwork. But usually from the local school, it is not easy to organize because there are only few, for example, only few students with special needs. They have very different needs, so there is difficult to organize the team supportive, collective procedure. But anyway, the legal statements are like that. And of course, there are some particular solutions how the teacher, the student with autism, because we are now talking about only this kind of students with this kind of special needs. So we have some particular, very specific support, and according to the legal statement, there is the obligation to employ additional teacher for a student with autistic disorder. And this is a very new obligation, and this is but it is very specific, and it is only related to students with ASD, not for others. So I could say that the students with autism are very specific in reference to the Polish educational system. And of course, it is a very good solution, but other students might also need such intensive support. This support is dedicated only for students with autism nowadays. And I would like to explain that the system of evaluation of special needs and the special support in Poland is very difficult. We have two levels and two different certifications. Just to say very briefly, the one certification given by psychological centers is about the teaching, about the special needs and the special support, which should be dedicated at the school level. The other certificate is not for special education or education at all, but it is the certificate on disability, and this is according to the certificate, some additional support are dedicated to the person, and it is usually about the disability, about the work, about the employment, and about some special financial support. So they are very difficult to understand and to deal with this legal statement for family because there is a lot of bureaucracy. But anyway, school system, so at school, if the child has this certificate for special education, this, according to the certificate, the student with autism could have some possibilities, or his or her parents have possibility to choose appropriate school setting, and the school setting are organized as usual. So we have special schools or special centers for autistic students. Some usually this is for lower functioning students, because there is very intensive support with small groups only for students, or even individual teaching is organized. The other kind of school is integrated school, and this school is organized like in very special way. There are classes for 20 students, and 5 of them should have some very different special needs, and this school, integrated school, are well equipped, and also multi-specialist team is working there, because many students with special needs attend to that school. 5 students in each class. So it is easy to organize in that school, to organize the support, and the support is on very high level. And now the third possibility is inclusive education, inclusive school. So it means that each local school should be open and should be ready for including students with different kind of special needs, and especially we are talking about students with autism. And in this school, this additional teacher for autistic student could be employed. So according to the parental idea of the best solution for the kid, it is their responsibility to choose this setting. And according to the law, the school should organize the support in reference to special needs, which are described or diagnosed at psychological center and certified with the documentation. So there's the settings, school settings, which a student with autism would attend. But regardless of the school setting the student attend, there are some additional special support which are combined with this decision. So first of all, the student has got the individual plan, and the supportive teacher or teacher of assistant or shadowing teacher should follow this individual plan and support the student according to that. So learning conditions should be also adequate to the special needs and to the level of functioning of the students. Sometimes the students should it's not possible to participate in the classes with the whole group. So he could participate or in individual classes, individual lessons, and these additional or supportive teachers follow him or her during this situation. So a student could be inclusive within the class, or sometimes for special classes, lessons could be in separate position. So this is very flexible how the teaching is organized, and it should be organized according to the best fulfillment of his needs. And it could be, it's not difficult to imagine that in every local school, this specific organization of class or school program and organization could be very difficult. But anyway, nowadays, parents are more interested in inclusive education than in special centers education, especially for that students who are highly functioning, because parents, of course, some of them are more interested in normalization and inclusion or social integration, then in specific teaching, specific solutions for particular students. Some research data show that it depends on parental acceptance for disability and dealing with stress and the view about their own child and their parental role. Of course, each parent wants to the best future for the children, but it's difficult to diagnose or describe what does it mean. And sometimes the best future is not adequate to students' particular possibilities. So nowadays in Poland, there is the very highly increasing amount of students with autism who participate in inclusive education in local school system. And I think that it is a great problem because of the money. At the legal level, official level, as I said, the school has to employ additional teacher. But on the practical level, sometimes there is no money for that additional teacher at the municipal level. So, at the lower position, local government have so local authorities has no money to such additional teacher, and there's the problem because there's the students' right, the parental right as well, and the opposite situation of real economical situation of the municipal. But and that is the problem because the parents should are very how to say stressed and are forced to fight for the money to support their own children. So I would like to express that there is a very complicated situation because on the legal position, the legal statement rights are very good, but on the practical level and economical level, it's not very easy to implement this legal statement. And education, our financial situation, economical situation in Poland, as you know, is very complicated, and because of the war in Ukraine, Poland is very engaged in the support. So there's less money for dealing with, for example, such problem as support special needs students, because the money was dedicated or sent to the other kind of support for immigrants students as well. So coming back to the classes and organizing the system in Poland, as I said, in inclusive education, there are possibilities or different kind of support, not only diagnosis and implementation, but also the organizing of special group. So usually in inclusive education, we have very large classes. For example, it's up to 34 students in class. So it is easy to imagine that the situation of autistic person in such pupils group, it's very hard and very difficult. But there is a possibility to have some individual support, individual revalidation classes. But it is only 2 hours per week. So if the student have some problems, educational problems with math, of Polish, or some other kind of other subject, he or she could attend to the special classes and get some individual support from the teacher. But only 2 hours per week. It's not very intensive support, but usually students with autism are trained in social activities, social practical activities, just to support them to integrate with pupils, and this usually get some good effects. So additional teacher is, as I said, something new. Solution in Polish system, but not additional employment is of course related to the financial situation, in particular municipal level. If the student with autism get this educational certificate, he also could get some special adjustments at the classes work or on and during the exams. In Poland, we have final exams at least 2 times. So one very important event is a final exam after the primary school. So at the 8th grade in April, usually we have final exam after the primary school. And the second one is a matrix exam after the finishing secondary or high school. So during this exam, there are some special adjustment for students with autism, not for other. And for example, students with autism could get support from his supportive teacher. Just the teacher follow the student and make the test or exam situation more familiar. So he's responsible for lower stress, make the student relax, and so on. There are also some additional technical devices possible to use. For example, recording, some writing on computer, and so on. So according to special needs and special learning situation of student with autism, there are specific adjustments, and that's a very good situation, because students nowadays we have students with autism who after who finish who pass this matrix exam after finishing secondary school, and they also could attend the university level teaching, so secondary or tertiary education. I would like to go to this main topic, so training for teachers. But the problem is very wide, because we could ask the question how we can organize the situation of students with autism more easy for them, and what are in general points which should be changed. And of course, training teachers is one on the one hand. So maybe firstly and most important thing is training teachers. Not only the supportive teachers, because they have to be the graduated in special education, so they are familiar with the problem, they are professionals. But training teachers who are responsible for subject teaching, so they are not special education professionals, and they should know a lot about specific situations, specific learning condition of autism, and how to find the common basis for their professional teachings of subjects and dealing with autistic needs. So this group of teachers are very interested in improving their knowledge, and they know they should be prepared, because there is the legal obligation the school should be open for students with autism, and local parents with children with autism are interested in such a school setting. So there is a specific and very important need to train teachers. But of course, improving this situation of students with autism is not only the task for teachers. And we could also point that it is the problem of parents, peers, and also students with autism per se. So we should train or change the attitudes of 4 groups at one time period to get very good effect. So teachers on the one hand, parents, and rebuilding their identity and their acceptance of the teacher, of this student, of the child, and build their self-esteem and so on. This is the other point. And working with typically developing children, it's third issue. So improving or changing attitudes, how to accept the students who are extraordinary, who may behave in very different manner. So it is really good, so very big, very big issue, because in Poland there are the results that more than 80% of students with autism who attend inclusive school experience bullying at school. So there is huge problem of acceptance, peers acceptance at school. And so there's the third group, and the fourth group is autistic students, because their practical skills of understanding the situation, of understanding their peers, and understanding the rules of school, formal and informal groups, is not sometimes is not adequate. So they also should be prepared for inclusive education. Once again, at the legal statement, we have very good solutions, but in the practical level, this implementing or getting into inclusive setting should be prepared at very, very early beginning at this 4 level: teachers, parents, peers, and also a student with autism, before they will go, the student with autism will go to the inclusive setting. Okay, so usually we have a lot of information that students, that teachers knowledge is not very high, knowledge about autism. So there are particular data, you can follow the references that in very different countries, Indonesia and Poland and other countries all over the world, there is the high importance need to improve the knowledge of students, of teachers. Not only teachers, but also medical staff and also other specialists, for example, professionals such as psychologists are also not very well prepared to be engaged in supporting a student with autism. So the need is very important, and up of filling this needs, my university was participate in the international project, which was organized, or the main aim was to organize the training for teachers and to prepare them for inclusive education of a student with autism. The methodology was mixed methods we use. We use qualitative as well as quantitative methods, and there are very important results. First of all, we tried to measure the needs. What was the needs of the teachers from different settings, inclusive settings, and as well as special school settings. And then we try to measure the level of these needs, and on that basis, we organize the training and the content of the workshop. The content was divided into six main topics about the communication, social skills, managing challenging behaviors, sensory needs, emotional understanding, and adaptation and modification of environment. You can follow the website of the project, and our materials are also uploaded there. So please, if you are interested, follow that project in details. But I would like to express the findings. Most groups were testing before the training and compare the results. And in general, the results were very interesting. So the group with, of course, teachers from special schools are certificate in or graduate, and their knowledge was high, but they also express the need to improve some
All right, Professor Joanna. I think we have some connections issues here. Alright. Baik, Bapak Ibu sambil menunggu Profesor Joanna kembali sebentar. Setelah ini akan ada sesi tanya jawab. Saya mempersilahkan ke rekan-rekan mahasiswa atau Bapak Ibu yang ingin bertanya, boleh menggunakan bahasa Indonesia, nanti akan saya bantu terjemahkan, atau boleh langsung juga menggunakan bahasa Inggris. Nah, sedikit gambaran tadi Profesor Joanna menjelaskan terkait sistem pendidikan untuk peserta didik berkebutuhan khusus di Poland, khususnya untuk peserta didik autis ya, rekan-rekan semua. Tadi ada dua hal menarik yang mungkin tidak ada di negara kita. Yang pertama adalah untuk peserta didik disabilitas atau untuk individu mereka dapat dua sertifikat. Yang pertama adalah sertifikat sebagai disabilitas untuk memperoleh dukungan dana. Dan yang kedua adalah sertifikat bahwa membutuhkan layanan pendidikan khusus, sehingga mereka bisa mendapatkan guru khusus ketika memiliki peserta didik yang berkebutuhan khusus. Sedangkan untuk anak autis, beliau tadi fokus pada anak autis, ada 3 layanan yang bisa diakses, mulai dari sekolah khusus, sekolah integrasi, dan sekolah inklusif. Baik, nampaknya kita masih menunggu Profesor Joanna join. Rekan-rekan panitia, beliau apakah terlempar? Sudah masuk lagi.
Sudah masuk.
Ya, ini Profesor Joanna.
Excuse me, I have the problem with.
No worries,
Yes.
Professor Joanna. That's fine. All right, you already come back. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Professor, so you still have 5 minutes left? So if you
Yes,
could,
of course.
yes, sure. Please go ahead.
So because we have the problem with connection, so I would
yes.
like to summarize the results of our research. The most important effects of training was for the teacher of inclusive school, because they were not prepared for a special education and they were not familiar with autism. But also teachers from special school settings got some their knowledge increased because some of them were a little bit older. So they finished their studies, for example, 20 years before. So they feel they need to renew this their knowledge. And of course, during 20 years, there's a lot of new information about autism and new practices. So all students were very interested and very satisfied with the workshops. But the practical effect of our project was describing the autism-friendly school, inclusive school, and get some information for local school how they can change the school, the organization, and the visual context to be more adequate to the students' needs. So first of all, for example, the visual structure at school should be, it might be not very difficult for the teachers and for the staff at all, because there is, if we can imagine how the children perceive the situation, the color, the light, the smell, and so on. So we can, if we are aware of their needs and their specificity of sensory situation, we could easily implement this at school. And the other thing is, for example, to use specific lightning without reflex at, for example, borders and so on. The sound is also very important. So if we have the children with autism, some school at school ring is school bell. School bell is changed into music. So there are very, how to say, soft changes, but in general they are more adequate for student needs, student with autism. The structural learning, so making some visual support, just or to name or to make some instruction how to deal with different kind of stuff at school. The rule, the description of the map, for example, or structure of the school, how to communicate and how to deal with different problems. It's not very difficult, but it's the most important is to be aware. The student, the teacher, be aware, the headmaster be aware how we could implement the school for the student needs. And in Krakow, after our training, because most students, more teachers were from Krakow and the surrounding, we have also get the backward information after holidays, because the training were before the holidays and after holidays in the new year, school years. Some teachers participated in our workshop, gave us some feedback, and the feedback was very positive that they start to be aware of that kind of needs and start to think how to change the class environment for the students. So that is the result. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Joanna. That's very comprehensive presentation. Thank you for giving us the glimpse of a view of how you treat students with autism in Poland. So, Professor, so if you still have time, so we'll have the questions and answer sessions with our participants here at the Rectorate building or our participants there on the Zoom meeting. So maybe I'll give the opportunity for questions from this room. Ada pertanyaan untuk Profesor Joanna? Silakan rekan-rekan semuanya. Ada pertanyaan? Oke. Ada yang bertanya? Oh, ya, silakan. Oh, ada banyak yang bertanya. Oke, silakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good afternoon, professors. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So my name is Asma Fahana, student at Indonesian Language and Literature Education Study Programs. So here in Universitas Negeri Surabaya, especially in Indonesian Language and Literature Department, Faculty of Languages and Arts, there's a course called Indonesian for Special Needs Children. As students, we have just known how to teach inclusive school, just known how to teach special needs children, just how to know how to interaction with ASD children. Is there a best practice or assessment required for us, especially for students from the education department will become in teacher in the future that maybe has been implemented in Poland? Thank you. Thank you
Alright,
so much.
thank you for the questions. Mungkin Bapak Ibu saya batasi satu pertanyaan. Nanti masih ada Pak Oli, ada Prof. Kiran, nanti bisa ditanyakan ke beliau, ada Profesor Budianto juga. Alright, Professor Joanna, could you hear the questions clearly? Or should I repeat the questions for you?
Yes, please.
Alright, yes, please. Okay. Boleh saya kalau tidak salah ya mohon dikoreksi. Tadi Anda bertanya bagaimana prakteknya untuk guru yang akan mengajar pada PDBK. Tapi tadi apakah Anda tanya formulir assessment atau apa tadi? Ya.
Ya, izin menambahkan barangkali di Polandia ada asesmen khusus atau penilaian khusus yang diberikan oleh calon ibu atau bapak guru di sana untuk mengajar special needs children.
Okay, so two questions in a simple way to say is that, are there any assessments prepared by the teachers before they teach students with special needs in schools? So are there any assessments that teachers need to prepare, or are there any instruments that are available for teachers before they teach students with special needs in the school? Professor Joanna.
No, there are not specific assessment. The children get certification, as I said, from the psychological center, and there is described in this certificate the level of the cognitive functioning. This and in general, the social and emotional functioning and the special needs and special adjustment for the curriculum. So there is the information from the center, outstanding or external center, and in this integrative school, as I said, that it is the best way organization, because there are the team, multi-specialist team working with different kind of special needs. So in this school, the external certification is reworked from this by this school specialist, and they try to find the proper solution how to deal with these needs at the school level. So it is the best solution. But in inclusive education, as I said, there's only one teacher, supportive teacher, is if it is the financial situation the best, and there's no support. So teachers are really in complicated, in difficult situation, because they have to find the proper solution how to work with students at the subjective lessons, math, Polish, history, and so on, without any support. So there's very, very, very difficult situation. Of course, it depends on a particular school, but there's no organization system. In some school, there is this staff, for example, a psychologist or a special teachers working at school. But it is not obligation nowadays, because this support, in particular local school, is in the process, I can say. So there is no special assessment, as you were talking about, as you were asking, which teachers could use.
All right. Thank you, Professor Joanna. That's very clear. So I will translate your response to our students who are asking that. So jadi Bapak Ibu sekalian, untuk assessment tadi, beliau menyampaikan tidak ada instrumen assessment yang khusus ataupun dalam satu organisasi, dan tergantung sekolahnya masing-masing. Ada sekolah yang memiliki psikolog dan guru pendidikan khusus, ada yang tidak. Tetapi tadi kondisi idealnya adalah membawa mereka ke pusat pemeriksaan psikologi untuk mendapatkan hasil pemeriksaan kognitif, sosial emosional, dan lain sebagainya, untuk digunakan kembali oleh guru di kelas sebagai acuan untuk memberikan program. Itu adalah kondisi ideal, tapi belum diterapkan pada semua sekolah yang ada di Poland. Seperti itu. Sudah jelas ya? Baik. Alright, I think that's clear enough, Professor Joanna. Thank you once again for your time. So we will move forward to the next speakers. Once again, thank you so much. Terima kasih. We send you the greatest warmth from our officials here at UNESA.
Thank you very much. I am very glad and I'm honored to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very honorable to us too. Thank you so much. So if you want to stay during the rest of the webinar, that's fine. But you have another agenda. If you want to leave, that's also fine too. Thank you once again,
Okay,
Professor
thank you.
Joanna. Boleh beri aplaus sekali lagi yang meriah untuk Profesor Joanna. Thank you so much. Baik, Bapak Ibu, kita akan berpindah ke pemateri kedua, yaitu Bapak Dr. Oli, PhD. Oli, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, or
Good
can
afternoon,
you
nice
hear
to
me?
see you. Yes.
Yes, or good morning, actually, from Finland.
Oh,
And
it's
very nice
morning there. All right.
Nice to be here.
All right, that's good. All right, Oli, so you are coming from the University of Helsinki, Finland, if I'm not mistaken, yep?
Yes, that's true.
Yes, we got your contact from the Vice Rector of Planning and Partnership, Mr. Sujarwanto, and he is also here, joining offline of our webinars. So, right, he says hi to you. Thank you, Oli, for joining. All right.
Thank you. Yes. I believe it was we had a delegation from Indonesia visiting our university about year ago.
Yes.
So then I already met some Indonesian colleagues, and it's very nice to rejoin now in this webinar.
All right, thank you, Oli. So, Oli, you have 30 minutes maximum to present, and then we'll have a Q&A session after that. All right.
Okay, thank
right,
you.
you
And
may
by the way, I will want to check that. Do you want me to stop every now and then to enable the
Sure.
translation, or do I just
No.
keep talking in English?
All right, so I won't do the translation. I will just do the conclusions after your presentation, so you don't have to give me time to translate your session.
Okay,
All right.
good to know.
Sure.
And now, I guess you will now see my screen.
Yes, it's on. It's processing. Yes, it's already clear.
Okay, so as I already mentioned, my name is Oliver Kamal, and I'm coming from the University of Helsinki, and this is actually a picture of our campus in the Faculty of Educational Sciences where I work. And maybe just to tell something about what my presentation will contain. So I will first shortly give some background information about the Finnish school system and how the educational support is defined and how widespread it is in Finnish schools. Then I will focus on a few examples of inclusive pedagogical practices. And I think those practices are not any like Finland specific. They are just good practices that are used in Finnish schools, but I know that they are also used in many other schools in many other parts of the world. And so generally good practices that enable inclusive education in regular schools. And then if we have time, we could have a few questions at the end of the presentation. A little bit about myself, so you know what perspective I'm talking about. So this would be maybe 3 aspects that have defined my professional life this far. So I've been involved quite much in teacher training and professional development, both in Finland but also in some other countries. The pictures in this slide, one of them is from mainland China and the other from Kazakhstan, where before COVID I worked in a training program related to inclusive education. Then also I like to see education from also different perspectives, not only from Finnish perspective, and one reason for that is that I also lived in some other countries with my family during my career. So now, for example, I have this month actually a visiting researcher from Indonesia that I'm hosting, and I'm learning a lot from her about Indonesian education, and also at the same time learning a lot from my own system, the Finnish education. So that is something that I value a lot, and also this webinar is one example of this kind of a cross-cultural sharing of good practices. And then, of course, one part of my professional career has been writing publications, many of them related to inclusive education and good pedagogical practices in implementing inclusion. this is just some background about and presenting so-called the global milestones of inclusive education, but maybe it's enough just to say that all this also applies to the Finnish context. So Finland is also dedicated this international declarations, such as the World Declaration of Education for All, the Salamanca Statement, Dakar Framework for Action, UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and so on. So this is the international policies, guidelines, declarations, legislation that guides the inclusion also in Finland, as in most of the other countries in the world. Then to the actual Finnish system. So in Finland, we tend to conceptualize the educational support or inclusive education into 3 tiers of support, and these tiers are quite similar to these 3-tier support systems in other countries. I've just taken United States as one of the examples of somewhat similar systems. So at the bottom, we have the general support, and this is the support that is targeted for every student in every school. So that should be available for everyone. Then we have the so-called intensified support, which is intended for some students who need more intensified support for their learning. But also this level of support, these tiers of support, should be available in every school in Finland. And then we have the highest level of support, the special support, which is only for a few pupils, few students, which need this kind of support. But also this level, this tier of support should be available in every school in Finland. So regardless of whether it's special education school or a regular education school, all these 3 levels of support should be provided. Then some more background information about the Finnish system, and I think this is something worth mentioning, that in Finnish education system, special education is not that special actually. So this is the latest statistics, national statistics I could find, and they show the share of students who receive either this special support or intensified support on a given year in the Finnish basic education, which means the grades from 1 to 9. And what this figure shows is that, for example, in year 2020, about 21% of students, so about 1/5 of all students in Finnish basic education schools, received either this special support or intensified support. So you can see here that in every school there are lots of students who receive support, and in every class there are several students basically who receive special support or intensified support. So in Finland, this special educational needs, special education support is not that special after all. That's one conclusion I would make. This is more statistics, just showing where the students with receiving special support study now, shows development from 1995 to 2015. And just one thing to pay attention to is that currently only a few students who receive special support are actually in special schools, whereas most students who receive this special support are in regular schools. And unfortunately, the statistics are not available from year 2020 or later, but I think the situation, the basic conclusion is still the same, that most students who receive special education support are in regular schools. Then yet another form of support that is maybe hard to explain here in short, but it's the part-time special education. So even students who do not have any official special education label or qualification or whatever, they may receive this part-time special education. So it can, for example, mean that if you struggle with learning to read, the special education teacher takes you and teaches you maybe 1 hour a week, a few lessons a month, that's in that specific area of learning to read. And then if the support is effective, maybe in next month or next week, you don't need anymore this part-time special education. But this is a very flexible form of support available, yet again, in every Finnish school and available for every student. And for example, in the academic year 2019-2020, over 20% of students in Finnish special basic education received this part-time special education, which is mostly delivered by a special education teacher who is working in regular school. So yet again, one example that the special education is not that special within the Finnish school system. About 1/5 of students receiving this part-time special education every year. Then I would like to just show some examples of what this general support that is available for every student in every school actually may mean in the context of Finnish education. So now I'm talking about this general support, which is offered for every student in every school. One area where this general support is I would say needed a lot is support for positive student behavior. At least in Finland and also in many other countries that I know, student behavior is a big issue when we are trying to develop inclusive education. In the Finnish context, what teachers seem to complain the most is those students who don't behave as the teachers expect them to do. And because the teachers complain a lot, that is also one big obstacle, one big barrier for inclusive education. The reasons for this negative behavior, unwanted behavior can be many. Actually, the ways of supporting positive behavior, they work basically regardless of the reason for the negative behavior, the original reason. And one example, for example, are these evidence-based strategies of class-level behavior support. I just took a screenshot from one classical article from Kearns and Clemens. The article is from the United States, but the practices I think can be implemented in many other contexts as well. And just showing a few examples of this practices, these strategies in the following slides. So some practices falling into category of this general support. So for example, increasing the predictability of the environment. This is something that can be done with every student in every class. Some students need it more than the others, but it doesn't hurt any student. So for example, in this picture, I've taken a picture from one inclusive classroom, which used lots of this visual support for students. So for example, here we have the daily program for the class, we have the weekly program for the class, and when we have a visual program for a certain lesson in the class. And what this does, this increases the predictability of the environment when the students know better what comes next, what to expect, and it sort of decreases the unease and anxiety among the students. And also having clear these programs, predictability, clear routines, it helps, especially when you are starting a lesson or ending the lesson, because those are many times the toughest moments in the lesson, especially for students with special education needs, when you have to transfer from activity to another, even sometimes transfer from one classroom to another classroom. Another practice that can be used in every classroom is very simple. I think many skillful teachers are already using it, and finding it useful is to arrange the classroom seating according to the activity. So not having always sometimes, or maybe go it that way. So sometimes it's good to have the middle picture here. So students sitting in tight rows individually. But then in some cases, if you want to promote group work among students, of course, the classroom setting on the left, where tables are grouped in the groups of 4, that's more beneficial. And in some cases, if you want to, for example, promote or want to have a discussion among the whole class, of course, then the classroom setting on the right is more beneficial, because then each student can see each other, and also the teacher can see all the students and hear all the students very clearly. So this is just something that can then benefit like inclusive classes. And also one thing to consider is, of course, that who sits next to who. So if you know that some students have lots of quarrel, it's better not to let them sit next to each other, but place them in separate parts of the classrooms. That maybe brings the more calm and a relaxed learning climate to the class. Yet another evidence-based practice, and yet another practice that doesn't come as a surprise for many teachers, which is this mixing brief and easy tasks with difficult ones. So we know that students, particularly students with special education needs, they need to push themselves in the limits, basically in in many lessons. And if you have only difficult tasks for them all the time, they may get tired, and when they get tired, they become unrestless and so on. And also we know that if you have only easy tasks for the students, they may get bored, and when they get bored, they start to cause some trouble. But I think the trick is to have enough easy and enough difficult tasks to keep the students engaged and keep the students interested. And one example here is to have 3 brief and simple tasks, just to get students going, to build their confidence before introducing one long and more difficult task. And then maybe next alternating with some brief and easy and simple tasks for the students. Yet another effective and evidence-based practice of supporting positive behavior in class is effective instructions. So good instructions are usually clear, so not ambiguous. The students immediately know what is expected from them. They are short, because we know that the working memory of people has its limits. So if you have too much in one instruction, the students may not remember them all. Then often good instructions are both oral and written. So the same things are said, and they are also written. And in many cases, they are also drawn or shown in pictures, so that students have many ways to grasp and understand what is expected from them. And then good instructions are often repeated. So in every lessons or in several lessons, the same instructions, so instructions don't change all the time. And then they are checked, so the teacher makes sure that the instructions are actually being followed by the students. So yet again, effective practice that is already used by many teachers all around the world, but which makes life in inclusive class much easier. Then another example of general support, which is the structured or differentiated instruction, yet another evidence-based practice that helps students teaching in inclusive classrooms. And here are just some examples of what this differentiated instruction may mean in inclusive class. So it may mean flexible grouping, which means that you can arrange students to smaller groups, maybe to enable more individualized instruction, or maybe at some points, for example, in Finnish schools, when the students are learning to read, at some point you may have those fluent readers in one group, and then those less fluent readers in one group, just to enable everyone to have enough challenges according to their current level of reading. Then some other examples of differentiated practices is modifying materials and resources for the students. So for some students, they may learn with written material, with workbook, with textbooks, while some students may be working with concrete materials like wooden blocks, making calculations with those materials instead of textbooks, and so on. And then another example, just to give some examples, is adjusting homework and tests for students. So not giving the exact the same amount and exact the same homework for every student, but according to students' needs, define what homework the particular students has to do. And also with the test, not using the same test for every student, but according to student needs, accommodating the tests that the students take.
All right, sorry to interrupt, Ollie, but you have 5 minutes left. If you could wrap up your...
Oh, okay, yeah. I just have like 19 minutes used, but I can wrap up quite soon. So here's another allowing students to choose where they work, another differentiation practices, and then yet another practice to help the life of inclusive classrooms is the structuring of the work, but maybe not going too much into detail here. So some examples of structuring the physical space, structuring the assignments so that the students know where they are and which assignment is for whom, and so on. Structuring the time of the learning activity so that the students know how long does this activity take, when do I have to stop, when do I start, and so on. And this was basically it. So if you have any questions, I tried to in this presentation be quite practice oriented, but of course there are many systemic issues like Professor Joanna introduced from Poland, but just a small glimpse to the actual pedagogical practices that are used in inclusive classrooms in Finland, and which might be useful also when teaching and learning inclusive classes in Indonesia. But now, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Wonderful, Ollie. Thank you so much. Boleh beri applause dulu, Bapak Ibu? Thank you so much, Ollie. Ollie, so I will translate. I'm trying my best to make a summary of your presentations to some of our students. Some of our students are very fluent in English, but others they need to be explain about your presentation. Tadi Ollie dari Universitas Helsinki, Finlandia, teman-teman sekalian. Jadi beliau tadi menyampaikan pengalaman beliau di bidang pendidikan inklusif, dan ada beberapa hal yang mungkin sedikit berbeda dari yang kita pahami di Indonesia. Yang pertama terkait layanan pendidikan untuk PDBK atau peserta didik berkebutuhan khusus. Tadi ada satu segitiga, kalau teman-teman masih ingat, ada 3 tingkat. Yang pertama adalah general, pendidikan umum, kemudian lebih intensif, dan pendidikan khusus. Dan mereka berusaha semaksimal mungkin bahwa seluruh siswa itu harus mengakses pendidikan umum dulu. Jadi tidak kemudian langsung kita tarik ke atas segitiga, tapi di bawah segitiga terlebih dahulu. Kemudian tadi Oli juga sudah menyampaikan beberapa tips untuk pembelajaran bagi PDBK. Yang pertama tadi positive behavior support, mendukung perilaku yang positif. Yang kedua tadi ada cara memberikan instruksi, padat, jelas, dan seterusnya. Kemudian ada pembelajaran berdiferensiasi. Dan yang terakhir tadi ada pengaturan kelas yang terstruktur. Alright, Oli, I think that's all from my summary. So I think this is the time for the question and answer. So I will ask our students here at the room and also from the virtual room. Silakan rekan-rekan, ada yang mau bertanya? Boleh? Oh, banyak sekali yang tanya. Boleh diangkat lebih tinggi tangannya? Supaya oke, yang depan ya. Alright, silakan. Silakan kalau langsung tanya bahasa Inggris ke Oli boleh, pakai bahasa Indonesia juga boleh. Kenalan dulu ya.
Oke, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Perkenalkan, nama saya Dian Nur Cahyani dari jurusan Bahasa dan Sastra Indonesia. Saya izin bertanya pada Mr. Oli, tadi kan di strategi berbasis bukti yang mendukung perilaku tingkat kelas itu kan dijelaskan bahwa guru itu memberikan materi secara lamban dan cepat. Nah, itu ada dua pilihan tadi yang telah ditampilkan di PPT. Nah, menurut Mr. Oli sendiri itu sebaiknya guru kalau mengajar anak yang berkebutuhan khusus itu menggunakan cara yang cepat atau yang lamban. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Tadi namanya siapa?
Dian.
Dian. Alright, Oli, we got the questions from Dian, one of our students at Universitas Negeri Surabaya. You explained earlier that there are two ways of teaching students. The first one is in a very quick way, very fast, and the second one is very slow way. So she's wondering which one of those method that you think is the most suitable for student with special needs.
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what this refers to. Maybe it was this alternating the quick and easy and then the more challenging tasks. And I think what I'll try to point there is that you should need to have different kinds of tasks for students to keep them engaged. So if you have too many too slow, too difficult tasks, the students get exhausted and then they cannot concentrate anymore. And if you have just too easy, too quick, of course the students may not learn that much, but also on the other hand, they don't also learn the skills of actually trying and thinking hard. And also, like having it too easy may also make you bored at some point. So I think that was what I tried to illustrate there, and then my answers would be that both like this kind of slow and quick learning are beneficial depending on the situation and the need of the students, and there's no like right and wrong there.
All right. Thank you, Oli. Thank you. You have answered that very clearly. So I'll explain to my students. Jadi untuk menentukan apakah pakai yang cara mengajar cepat atau lambat, atau tadi Oli menambahkan apakah tugasnya sulit atau mudah, itu tergantung dengan kondisi masing-masing peserta didik atau siswa. Karena kalau terlalu sulit mungkin siswanya akan merasa kelelahan atau tidak merasa bersemangat, tapi kalau terlalu mudah itu siswa juga akan mengalami kebosanan atau boring. Sehingga tadi Oli menyampaikan tidak bergantung pada jenis PDBK-nya apa, tetapi bergantung pada situasi masing-masing siswa. Seperti itu dia. Alright. So Oli, I think we still have time for another questions. Is that fine for you, Oli?
Yes, it is.
Alright, so silakan. Tadi ada yang dari belakang mau bertanya, boleh?
Baik, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for the time given by moderator, and good afternoon, great speakers and all participants who attended international seminar today. Let me introduce myself. I'm Nala Mazia Fitrias, a student of Indonesian Language and Literature, Faculty of Language and Arts. In a case of language learning, what an effective strategy or method an educator can use to teach and guide children with special need, and to what succession criteria they are held to, speaking or writing skills? Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Oli, I will try to summarize the questions. So do you have any practical tips to teach language to students with special needs, particularly in speaking and listening? Yeah, speaking and
yes.
listening.
So maybe first I have to say that I'm not an expert in language learning and language pedagogy. So I look this from a perspective of special education professional because that's where most of my background is. So I would say that many of the practices that I, for example, showed now, they also applied to language learning situations. So for example, this differentiated instruction, so not having every student to do exactly the same thing for exactly the same time and using exactly the same material. Yeah, but instead to let students maybe to choose the way they learn, choose the material that they use in this particular lesson, and then maybe dedicate a different amount of time for the activity, so that differentiation. And then this structured instruction that I showed, so that every student in the classroom knows exactly what they are supposed to do. So for example, having clear instructions, then maybe having a certain space in the classroom dedicated for certain kind of activities. For example, when we are practicing speaking, we do it in this part of the classroom. And when we are practicing in writing, we do it in this part of the classroom, and there should be silence there when the writing and reading is done. Of course, depending of whether that's possible in the given space. So I think these general practices, they work in language learning, but then of course in language learning, which I'm not expert in, there are also some specific strategies that you could use, but I don't dare to mention now, because I love language learning myself, but I'm not a language teacher, so maybe I leave it here.
Alright, thank you Oli, thank you for the tips. Oke, baik. Tadi terkait pertanyaan yang disampaikan, Oli menyampaikan beliau bukan ahli dalam bidang pembelajaran bahasa ya, tapi beliau menyampaikan ada dua hal yang bisa diterapkan, tapi ini secara umum yang bisa kita lakukan. Yang pertama adalah differentiation, pembelajaran berdiferensiasi. Dia berharap pada variasi metode yang diberikan kepada anak sesuai dengan karakteristiknya. Yang kedua adalah pembelajaran terstruktur atau structured teaching, tadi yang beliau jelaskan. Jadi ada informasi instruksi yang jelas, kemudian ada space atau ruang-ruang kosong untuk siswa menuliskan sesuatu atau menyampaikan sesuatu, kemudian ada juga pilihan aktivitas, seperti itu. Semoga bisa dipahami ya. Alright. Thank you, Oli. I think that's all. Our students already understood your answers.
Maybe if you can I can mention that if you want to know more about sort of the system level things in Finnish education, this is just one book written by my friend, an Indonesian lady living here in Finland, and explain in more detail the Finnish education, including also the inclusive education in Finland. But just to leave that as one tip if you are interested in knowing more.
Oke, thank you Oli. Tadi Oli sudah sharing ya, ada satu buku yang bisa teman-teman akses kalau ingin tahu lebih banyak terkait sistem pendidikan di Finlandia, termasuk sistem pendidikan inklusif. Thank you Oli, that's very honorable of us to have you today for this webinar. Thank you so much for your time. Yes.
Thank you for inviting.
Yes, see you later on another event. So you might leave from this webinar if you have another agenda, but if you want to stay with us, that's also fine, Oli.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. See you later. Boleh beri aplaus sekali lagi untuk Oli, Bapak Ibu. Thank you, Oli. Baik, Bapak Ibu sekalian, sampailah kita ke sesi yang sudah ditunggu-tunggu, karena pematerinya dari tadi sudah ada di sini ya, sudah ada di depan kita. So we have on my left hand side Professor Kiran. See here, drum rolls. Sorry, it's already sore. Alright. Kita juga ada Profesor Budianto, saya yakin rekan-rekan sudah kenal semuanya. Kalau yang belum kenal, beliau profesor di pendidikan luar biasa, dan Prof Kiran. Oke, boleh beri aplaus tuh beliau berdua. Baik, tanpa panjang lebar, saya berikan dulu sesi ini ke Prof Budi untuk bridging ke Prof Kiran. Atau Prof Kiran dulu. Prof Budi nanti tinggal menimpulkan. Siap. Alright, Professor Kiran. Yes, this is your turn. So I want to translate your explanation, so just go. Yeah, just afterwards. Okay. Silakan PowerPoint-nya, teman-teman.
Bu. Selamat sore semuanya. Semua. Yes. Nama saya Prof Kiran. dari Open University Inggris. Ini saya dengan lebih banyak rambut. Maaf saya harus berbicara bahasa Inggris sekarang. Sorry. Okay, is that okay? Right, that's fine. Right. I will talk about some work we have done, and we will look around the world, and we will see evidence of what we think is the best ways to teach inclusively, and it may answer some questions that you have, I hope. I will start with a little bit of legislation, then we will look at what works in classrooms in different countries and what we have learned. So next slide, please. We will look at inclusive education in different countries. Then we will look at inclusive teaching approaches and what we have found that works. And when we say what works, we mean what has evidence to show that it is good when teachers are able to use it. Say, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. We all talk about inclusive education, but how would you define it yourself? This may seem an easy question, but your definition of inclusive education will be different from your definition. We all have different ideas in our head about what it means in practice. And we will see this actually happens in different countries around the world too. Next slide, please. This is just the background of why we have inclusive education. It came originally from a sort of rights movement associated with children's rights, the Salamanca Statement, saying that everyone has a right to education. Because at the time of this, in the 90s, and when I started teaching, even in England, not every child had access to education in school. When I started, we had groups of children who were deemed ineducable. Now we haven't. And a lot of the changes we see are because of this rights-based approach. And this says that all children have a right to be educated, and educated with their peers in school. And many countries around the world have signed up to this idea. They all say, we agree with this. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a UNESCO statement. All children have a right to be educated together. Do you agree with that? Do you? Or can you think of a child, maybe one, who you think, I would not want him in my class? All these children, they can come in, but not this one. He is better over here with the other teacher. But we have signed up for this. It's a very strong commitment. And as you see, it kind of fits in with an Indonesian idea of unity in diversity. So inclusion chimes very strongly with the Indonesian vision for the future. Next slide, please. If we look at the legislation, we don't have an official definition of what inclusion means. So when governments say they are doing inclusive education, it's very different, and I will show you some examples of this. So when you hear someone from, like today, from Poland or Finland or from the United Kingdom or Indonesia, and we talk about inclusion, we may be meaning slightly different things. So if someone tells you we do inclusive education, you need to ask them about what that means in practice. What's that happening in the classroom? Who is in the classroom? Next, please. So this was a study we did, led by my colleague John T. Ricks, Prof. John T. Ricks down there. And we looked at educational practices for children with special educational needs around the world. We looked at all these countries. Next slide, please. We started off looking at policy in 55 countries, policies. We did a survey then of 10 countries. Then we went in-depth case studies. We visited 4. Well, we did 3 plus Ireland. The Irish government commissioned this research. So big policy, big questionnaire, in-depth case studies of 4 countries. Next, please. One thing we found in all the countries, in nearly all the countries, they existed this thing called a continuum of education, of special educational provision. So most separate here, full-time special school or not in school some at a time, in school most of the time but with support, maybe in a room in the school, in the classroom all the time with support, in the classroom all the time with support, with their friends and seamlessly there. So that sort of continuum existed in all the country. And when we asked people, what does inclusive education mean? Some people would say, inclusive education is here. A child is in the school, maybe with support in a unit. Other countries would say, you can go here, or you can be in a special school. And for other countries, inclusive education was only here if you were in the same school with your friends. So all these things we found. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. One of the things we did, we sent out little vignettes, little stories of children, and we sent them out to the countries. And so we gave them stories about each of these groups or labels that were given to children in all of the countries. And these labels are understood in every single country. So if we just look at, we talked about autism, we talked about the autistic spectrum disorder. Next slide, please. This is one we sent to everybody. We changed the name to fit the country. So we sent this to all these countries. And have a look at this and tell me, have you ever met a child a bit like this? Do you know a child like this? He lives at home with his parents and his brothers. He seems maybe wealthy. His father's a lawyer, his mother's a teacher. He's very fit and healthy. He loves playing, but his parents are very worried about his lack of speech. He's not really speaking. He may say a few words, but often he just repeats what he hears being said to him. So if we said to him, Francesco, would you like a biscuit? He would say, Francesco, like a biscuit. Or we say, look, there's a tree. Look, there's a tree. Echolalia. He would just repeat that back. Do you know this type of child? Some people know. Okay, next slide. We asked them, this type of child, where would they be educated? How would his needs be assessed? What assessment tools do you use for autism? What support would it be offer? Where would the money come from? I won't talk about that today, but we looked a lot at funding. What curriculum would he follow? Would he be the same curriculum as his friends? Would it be adapted curriculum or a different curriculum? Next slide, please. And here's what we found. Along the bottom here, you can see the type of school. Mainstream, over there. Specialist, specialized. Child Development Center. Residential school, so away from his family, sent away, and then no school. And we can see here that, say, in Kenya, he would be in a residential school. That would be his only school choice. He could not go to mainstream school, residential school. In Japan or Lithuania, he would be either in a special sort of play group, a specialist play group for children with autism, or he would be in a child development center. There's also a slight chance of him going to mainstream, but not much. And in the other countries, Scotland, Cyprus, Australia, Norway, Italy, Canada, Ireland, he would probably be in mainstream school or maybe a special kindergarten. So the same child with the same special educational need would be in very different schools depending on the country he was born in. It was nothing to do with the child, it was nothing to do with his skills, it was simply where he was born determined where he went. Next slide, please. And overall, about all the things we did, we found this kind of pattern. So in some schools, nearly everyone was in mainstream. In some countries, nearly everyone was in mainstream. In some countries, most children with special needs were in special schools, and then there was a mix in the middle, So the thing that varies is the country. For the same child, same children, this all varies, okay? Next slide, please. And we looked at what supported inclusion in these countries. And by inclusion, we meant coming up this end of this continuum. What enabled this child, like the one we saw, not to be here in residential school or out of school, but here? What helped him to be here in class with his friends, being taught in a mainstream class in an inclusive school? What things seem to work? And here on the left-hand side are the things that help, and on the right-hand side are the things that stop it. Interestingly, they're not the things we expected to find. These are some surprises for us. Firstly, teachers being able to move. And by that I mean move between special school, resource units, and mainstream schools. We found in some schools in Japan, teachers would regularly teach in a special school and then go and teach in a mainstream school. And that really supported inclusion because the teachers, they knew the children from when they were in the special school, they knew them when they're in the mainstream school. They had a good skill set. It also meant that special education teachers were highly regarded. They were not seen as other than teachers. Being welcome, a big issue. We interviewed many parents, and a big factor for them was that they felt welcome. When they brought their child to the school, very often they were told, not for our school, not for our school. Even when the school had, we are inclusive school, and even when the government said, we are for all children, the parents could feel unwelcome and not wanted. And they basically implied to take their child out. So being welcome really helped. So that's an attitude of the staff. Teachers working in teams, supporting one another, being flexible. Needs of the group as a focus. When we were in Italy, one of the interesting things we found was that when a child was coming to a school, the head teacher would say, which class would this child fit in all right? If he was a demanding child, perhaps with behavior problems, they would think he could fit in here, he could not go in this class because of the other children. So she mentioned assessment, but this is rarely done, is people look at the social mix of the classroom to find out where a child should go and where he will learn best. And simple contracts. Simple contracts. So the system must be simple. Not lots of forms to get assistance. Not lots of paperwork. Teachers talked about forms and paperwork. Parents talked about forms and paperwork. Where inclusion works, it's simple. And then on the other side, things that stop inclusion, medicalized advice. So the advice comes from doctors and psychologists, and it comes to teachers. It does not tell them how to teach. It does not tell them how to support the child in the school. So we need assessment that is directed towards what happens in the classroom. What must the child do? How can we help the child learn in the classroom and help all the other children learn at the same time? That's right. Next, please. One thing we found everywhere, lack of pupil voice or consultation. What we mean there is the Convention of the Rights of the Child say that children should be listened to and that their wishes and needs should be taken into account by looking at their placement and their lives. And this, if educational practices are meant to benefit pupils, then we should listen to them. And yet, this was almost never happened in any of the countries we visited. The assessment process, the placement process was all about teams of adults, teachers, parents. The child was never consulted. And the group for whom this was most important were children with severe learning difficulties, with communication problems. So they were excluded completely from any consultation about where they would go to school, what would happen to them, even to the extent of explaining to them where they might go. Next, please. Okay, so that's the backdrop, general, and now we'll look at classroom practice. Okay, next one, please. Next slide. We looked at evidence. This study was, we asked student teachers, what would you like us to find out? And they said, we want to know how to teach a child with special needs in a big class. How do we teach a child with special needs in a standard class? Not with 3 or 4 children maybe, but with 20, 30 children. What works? So that's what we set out to do. We looked at research in this area, and this is all, you can all download this all for free if you need it. We screened thousands of papers. Next slide, please. And we found these 5 things were really important. These seem to be associated with situations where children, all children in the class, their academic outcomes improved and their social and emotional integration into the classroom improved. First one, social engagement intrinsic to the pedagogy. So teaching of the children involved social interaction, talking to them, listening to them. That was the number 1. Not lining them up and transmitting at them like I'm doing now. What I'm doing now is bad teaching. It's not inclusive. Interaction. Scaffolding of classroom activities. So find out what the child learns and gradually give them a little help, a little help, a little help to improve and understand. Now that may be through visual timetables, a picture of what's happening next. It may be with a small child physically guiding them. It may be just a little slower instruction and breaking it down into small steps. A lot of ways to do that. Authenticity of classroom activities. Classroom activities that teach a topic and you think are valuable. The teacher thinks valuable. Pedagogic community. Teachers who did well in inclusive classrooms had a community of support outside the school, usually online. They had online community for help. They could say, I have a child who I'm unable to teach, something's happening here, and they would discuss it with their friends. And they had a shared vision, and they would share their expertise. And lastly, flexible modes of representing activities. So not just always talking to the child, giving them movement, giving them things to move for maths problems. So mathematics not just on a board, mathematics with objects. Songs, smells, different ways of representing the same ideas and concepts seem to work. And these things worked for all the children in the class, not just the 1 or 2 children with special educational needs. Everyone benefited from this approach. Okay, next. So, where would we find a good example of this sort of thing? How can we create a classroom that works for all children? How to use those 5 features? Lots of research and development led to, next slide please, this. Silong, Indonesia. Now, I mention this because this is an example of focusing on communication. If you do not have a communication approach that works for all children in the classroom, inclusion cannot happen. Communication is the heart of inclusive education. So, the first thing to say is this is keyword signing. It's not sign language for deaf children. It's not deaf sign language. Very different. Deaf sign language, beautiful, rich language. You have Bisindu here. We have British Sign Language in England. We have Irish Sign Language. They are rich languages with a history and complex vocabulary and grammar. Keyword signing, very simple. One word, one sign per sentence, a keyword. Just a simple way to support spoken English. So the teacher would say a sentence and use one sign in that sentence. There's lots of evidence to show this is effective, and Signing Indonesia is unique because it begins from a perspective of how to support inclusion. A lot of the other approaches like this begin here in special education. Signing Indonesia begins here. It's a different approach, so it's unique. Next, please. Next, please. So this is an internationally important development happening in this country now, happening in UNESA, happening in Surabaya, in that starting here is very unusual. It's based on large-scale research, the idea behind it and everything. The approach itself is very simple. It can be used by all children. So all children in the class would use it because it's so simple. It's so simple. Yet, all children benefit from it. Next slide, please. It's been used in different ways here in this very campus. I'm just looking at the higher education vocabulary. We've had COVID-19 accessible stories and videos during the pandemic. Animated characters. We've looked at research evaluating sign-supported books in kindergarten. So we have those keyword sign-supported books in kindergarten, and our research is telling us that when we use that, all children learn. It can be used in mainstream schools where there are no children with disabilities in. No children with special educational needs. You use this approach, all the children's learning will improve. So someone mentioned, how do you teach language skills and communication skills? This is how you do it. This is how you do it. It's a way in. It's multimodal. It represents the key parts of a sentence in a way that's accessible to the children. It allows communication in the classroom that would otherwise not happen. And we've got research to show it's effective. Next slide, please. There are lots of things. If you Google Signing Indonesia, you'll find things like this, the video. The idea, though, is just accessibility and making it part of a culture where it is used here rather than over here in the special. New slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. It's quite popular. A couple of years ago, 2016, so this is quite a while ago now, we can see that Signing Indonesia was getting picked up a lot, and since then it's grown. And it's grown without a huge amount of financial support, just with goodwill and training, because people like using it. So we have an inclusive support that is developed in Indonesia for inclusive classrooms that people enjoy using, that seems to work. And these are other approaches that you might find in relation to autism, and we just made a comparison here. So Signing Indonesia is one of the top 5 those many years ago. It's higher now. Next slide, please. Does it work if you use this? This is just one study we did. So 104 teachers, we asked them. Anybody seen this? 70% are trained. 95% of the teachers, 95% who used it said it's improved children's education. 90% said it improved their ability to teach children with special educational needs in their class. So when we're looking at best practice, we have an example of best practice. There are not many things that work at this high level. And 92% said it had improved the inclusion of disabled children in their class. Next slide, please. This is an example of a science-supported big book for a kindergarten, because kindergartens, any kindergarten teachers here? See hands? Kindergartens? Anybody, any kindergarten people here? No kindergarten teachers. Has anybody got a hand? Nobody has a hand either? Anybody sitting down? Put your hand up if you're sitting down. No, so nobody has sitting down. Anybody teach kindergarten children or want to teach kindergarten children? No? Okay, so I will skip this because no one will be interested. All right. Next slide, please. So it's a simple story, a big book. You have the story, and on the back is the keyword sign for the teacher. The teacher can use it and use that one sign for that one page of the story. Next slide, please. That's what it looks like, and we published research about it. The paper, this is at the end. Next slide, please. We're using it in various kindergartens across Indonesia. Each one of those dots represents, I think, 10 or 20 kindergartens. Next slide, please. But the key to inclusive education is having an advocate, someone who promotes and will fight for the rights of children to be included. Now, we're very fortunate here because all of that, you say, well, how did that happen? Why has that thing here not happened in other countries? And really, it's because they don't have Prof. Budianto. If they had him, they could do it. So we're very fortunate because you need to drive what works in inclusive classrooms is having someone who's keen to support it happening for teachers and to see it happening in teacher training. Next slide, please. So to conclude, really, that when we look at the best international practices and what works, you're really sitting in somewhere and you're very close to some of the best things that are happening internationally. They are here now. They're here now. Okay, next slide, please. And if you're interested in following up any of these things, these links are all free and they indicate what we've been talking about. Thank you.
Baik, rekan-rekan semua, saya akan bantu summarize, rangkum apa yang Prof. Kiran sampaikan tadi. Dari awal tadi Prof. Kiran menyampaikan landasan hukum terkait penyelenggaraan pendidikan inklusif, mulai dari kesepakatan UNESCO dan seterusnya. Kemudian Prof. Kiran juga menyampaikan terkait definisi inklusi yang berbeda antar negara. Belum ada kesepakatan apa sebenarnya inklusif tersebut. Tadi Prof. Kiran sudah mensimulasikan ada negara yang mungkin mendefinisikan inklusif ketika anak itu belajar tidak 100% di kelas umum. Ada yang mendefinisikan anak itu harus belajar bersama-sama dengan siswa lain di kelas umum. Sangat luas makna pendidikan inklusif yang sehingga berdampak pada prakteknya yang berbeda satu sama lain. Tadi Prof. Kiran juga menunjukkan grafik ada negara-negara yang sangat dominan PDBK-nya bersekolah di sekolah umum atau sebaliknya justru lebih banyak di sekolah khusus atau sekolah luar biasa. Kemudian Prof. Kiran tadi menyampaikan beberapa praktek baik untuk mendukung pendidikan inklusif, mulai dari Sign Along Indonesia dan seterusnya, tadi teman-teman sudah memperhatikan. Dan yang terakhir tadi beliau menutup dengan kalau teman-teman ingin mencari tahu praktek terbaik inklusif yang ada di dunia, maka UNESA adalah tempatnya dan orang-orang ini adalah orang-orang yang juga berkontribusi terhadap pendidikan inklusif. Alright, boleh beri aplaus untuk Prof. Kiran dan UNESA juga ya, terima kasih. Alright, baik, selanjutnya silakan teman-teman tanya langsung ke Prof. Kiran, boleh angkat tangannya? 1, 2, 3, sudah ya 3 ya? Boleh? Ya. Yang depan dulu? Atau yang sana dulu deh? lebih dekat sama Farah. Tadi siapa yang dari sebelah sana? Oke, silakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, professors. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So my name is Resma Fana Mamuri, called Resma, student at Indonesian Language and Literature Education Study Program. Here in Universitas Negeri Surabaya, especially in Indonesian Language and Literature Department, Faculty of Languages and Arts, there's a course called Indonesian for Special Needs Children. As students who have just known how to teach inclusion schools, how to teach special needs children, is there any best practice or assessment required for us, especially for students from the education department who will become a teacher in the future, which has been implemented in United Kingdom? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm getting old man. I will be a grandfather soon. Tell him I'll be a grandfather soon. Tell him I'll be a grandfather soon. I am.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
really.
that's very nice to hear. Beliau akan segera menjadi kakek ya. Boleh beri semangat untuk beliau. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. That's my grandfather. Now, yes, it's good. Language teaching is challenging with children with special educational needs. It's very tough. Those 5 things I mentioned when we talked about inclusion, they really help if you think about those. The main thing is multimodal representation. So you have pictures, you have songs, you have objects, but keyword signing, like Sign Language Indonesia, is really good. It works really well. It allows children to understand language that they see the teacher, and it enables them to communicate understand at a higher level than they can without the sign. And it also is good for children who don't have language problems, but for children with special educational needs and who are at a very early stage of language development, keyword signing is really helpful in giving them a way in. They may not use it all the time. They may just use it when they're in a kindergarten or primary. And for some, they may use it all the time. But it's so simple, and that's a really good way in. Now, to teach English, there has been work done using keyword signing in England for children who do not speak English to teach them English, and that was quite promising. But there are other approaches as well, mnemonic approaches, where you teach a simple vocabulary making associations. So if you Googled mnemonic teaching approaches for English as a second language or English language teaching, that's a really good way in. But I would say broadly, those 5 things, multimodal, keyword signing is a good starting point, and then look at specialist techniques for vocabulary, such as mnemonics. I'm thinking here of children with severe learning difficulties. So not children who perhaps have a few problems, children who significantly have big challenges. Multimodal, keyword signing, something like mnemonics to get a core vocabulary, and then things like social stories, social storybooks, so they see the language being used and they can join in, and they learn the story structure, and they learn the structure before they learn the words. But that's, I'm sure you know that. I know you know that. But this is my end. You're here, I'm here, and here, multimodal keyword signing is where I would go to start with.
Alright, thank you, Prof. Kiran. Oke, saya coba bantu terjemahkan. Tadi beliau menyampaikan 5 tips yang beliau sampaikan tadi yang di slide, itu juga bisa membantu. Tapi secara spesifik beliau menyampaikan ada 4. Yang pertama adalah penggunaan multimodal. Jadi selain ada gambarnya, ada suaranya juga. Yang kedua adalah keyword signing, bahasa isyarat dengan kata kunci. Jadi yang beliau sampaikan sign along itu adalah salah satu keyword signing yang beliau sampaikan. Yang ketiga adalah mnemonik, strategi mnemonik khususnya untuk vocabulary, untuk pembendaharaan kata itu bisa juga diterapkan rekan-rekan sekalian. Kemudian yang keempat, ya, beliau juga menyampaikan social story. Jadi anak itu langsung mengetahui konteks bahasa itu digunakan dalam situasi yang nyata seperti itu. Sudah cukup jelas tadi yang bertanya? Oke, thank you. Alright, second question please. Sebelah sini.
Baik, terima kasih atas kesempatan yang diberikan. Sebelumnya perkenalkan, saya Mega Nur Karisma dari Prodi S1 Pendidikan Bahasa dan Sastra Indonesia. Saya ingin bertanya, kemarin saya baru saja melakukan observasi langsung ke sekolah luar biasa dan saya mendapati bahwa salah satu siswa di tempat tersebut yang kebetulan adalah penyandang tunagrahita dan saat melakukan pembelajaran, mereka cenderung akan menjadi sedikit marah dan mulai menggeram apabila terlalu intens menerima pelajaran. Padahal waktu yang dilalui untuk pembelajaran relatif normal dan tidak terlalu lama. Apakah ada cara khusus atau kiat-kiat tersendiri yang bisa dilakukan oleh seorang guru atau pengajar dalam menghadapi siswa tersebut? Terima kasih.
Alright, terima kasih. Should I translate it? Or you got the first. That's fine. Alright. So she did an observation in a special school, and she met a student who's having an intellectual disability. So during the lessons, the students will get angry if the lesson is getting intense. So as the time goes by, they'll start to feel stress and yaps. So are there any tips to deal with that kind of students in a classroom?
Yes, it's really good, really interesting. When I started teaching, I was in a similar position, and I saw children whose behavior was bad in class. They would sit for 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes, and then kick, tug hair, all so and so. And when I was there, I thought of programs, behavior programs for the child that we could use. Do you want to translate that, or shall I? I'll carry on. Yeah, good memory, good memory. Good man, good man. But after I've been teaching for a few years and doing other things, my focus changed, and they became much more on the lesson and not on the child. So my first thing would be to say, are you convinced that the child can understand what is going on in the classroom? So is there a visual timetable perhaps that shows what's talking? Or is it just all talk? If it's all talk, it's very hard. Like when I listen to you talking, first 5 words, oh yeah, I understand, and then after 5 words, poof, I would be like that child. So can the child understand what's going on in the classroom in terms of language? And if not, we need to support the language, perhaps break the lesson down in different ways. And also have the things that Prof. Ollie was saying about having clearly structured lessons with a variety of practices going on. All the things he said in his presentation, I would recommend for that child. He gave very good advice. So I would have the two things. One is, three things. One is, can the child understand what is going on, and why can they not understand? Is it because the teacher is only talking and not showing? Only talking and not giving any hands-on? Only talking and no writing or drawing? So that's one thing. If that is the case, we need to change the classroom so the child can see what's happening and understand it. Also, it may be the child has come from situations where they only communicate for short bursts of time, and now they're in a classroom with hours of talk. It's exhausting, so you need to look at that. Then, Prof. Ollie's ways of structuring the classroom and the activities, highly recommended. And B, talking to with the teacher to see how we can change the lesson so it benefits all the children, including this child. But I know exactly the child you mean, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but that three-pronged approach is the way to go, I think.
Wonderful explanations. Tadi Profesor Kieron menjelaskan kalau beliau dulu saat masih seperti teman-teman mahasiswa, beliau juga ketemu siswa yang sama. Dan maksudnya dulu reaksi pertama beliau adalah mengubah siswa tadi melalui modifikasi perilaku. Tapi sekarang setelah beberapa tahun beliau merubah mindsetnya, bukan kita merubah siswanya tapi kita merubah kelas kita. Nah, ada 3 cara yang beliau tadi sampaikan untuk merubah kelas. Yang pertama, memastikan siswa memahami bahasa kita. Jangan sampai ternyata siswa itu tidak paham karena hanya bicara. Kita perlu ada visual supaya dia bisa paham, atau kegiatan yang melibatkan hands on, kerja pakai tangan seperti itu. Dan yang kedua tadi, kalau terlalu banyak bicara tentu sangat membosankan. Prof. Kieron tadi bilang mungkin tadi 5 kata bisa paham yang Mbak sampaikan, tapi setelah itu beliau akan lost ya. Bisa jadi seperti itu. Yang ketiga adalah pengajaran terstruktur seperti yang Oli tadi sampaikan. Itu sangat mungkin untuk dilakukan dan sangat efektif untuk membantu siswa yang tadi. Beliau menyampaikan beliau sangat paham kondisi siswa tersebut, perlu proses untuk itu. Kalau ini semua sudah selesai, kita juga harus merubah mindset guru lain supaya merubah kelasnya. Jadi bukan terlalu fokus kepada untuk perilaku anak tersebut, tapi bagaimana kita merubah kelasnya. Sudah jelas? Alright. Sama-sama. Last questions? Right. Pertanyaan terakhir silakan. Kenapa? Oh, we have two questions? What do you think? I'm happy every time. Alright, you're happy every time, okay. 2 questions maybe, 2 aja ya, 2. Oke, silakan dari sana dulu Mbak Farah.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for the time. Let me introduce myself. My name is Wildan Afan Rizaldi. I'm from Special Needs Education, the Faculty of Education, and I take the teacher professional programs actually. So I would like to ask about the great presentations topic. So first of all, I want to ask regarding the behavior management. So behavior management for the children with special needs, actually all of a kind special children and that one actually will connected to my next question, yeah. So how about how you train them to arrange the behavior management, so from the kids since the kids until they're an adult. So and how about the transition program from the school to employment, actually like that? So is it any like partnership with the company, or is it you train them to be entrepreneur in UK like that? Okay, thank you. It's enough.
So some of our students are actually undertaking the professional development program. I think it's one of those. So based on what you got to contribute to educating, but not respecting the professional development program.
And it's good question. Yes, it varies depending on where in the United Kingdom you are. In Scotland, Wales and England and Northern Ireland, slightly different. But if you are say you're in a special school here, you can stay there till you're 19 and in some cases older. So, and those final years are used for transition. Now, your question about who does it is a really good one. Yes, there are private charities involved, and their role is to find placements for these young people in employment. And some are relatively successful, but it is very challenging. It's very challenging. But yes, so the companies provide, we'd have day placement. When I was a teacher, with the older children, they would go in to do some sort of work, maybe 16, 17, for half a day every week. But we'd send an assistant with them to go with them, and then as they got older, then they would go to a college, and then from there they would then have employment opportunities. But I've made it sound very easy, but the reality is very difficult. You know, it's very hard. Many employers are not so keen. The ones that are keen have filled their places. They have no space. So it is a challenge, and our children are competing with other people. The government provide grants to support it, which is helpful, and the companies avail themselves of this. So yes, we have transition programs in schools. Yes, there are organizations, charitable organizations as well, that support the transition, but unemployment is very, very high, still very high. I know people, young people with learning difficulties who have good jobs in supermarkets. Well, actually people I'm thinking are all work in different supermarkets, on the till, on the till, or not customer service, customer help, come and help the customers. But I know other young people who have no such opportunity. So they may go to the equivalent of sort of training centers, but they're training for something that may not happen. I do not know how often it happens, but in England we used to have training centers where people did work sort of on a national program, but I think they've nearly all gone now. So now it is the route through, sorry. So on paper, looks good. In practice, it's difficult. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Wonderful. So he actually asked you about the behavior management thing. So could you explain about the behavior management, what kind of thing, a program? Are there any?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah, the behavior management side happens here when they're in school. When I was a teacher, we took our children to supermarkets and they had you know the word meltdown? And I was the teacher, so we'd take them. So we had proper programs and we had charts and graded, so we would in a supermarket for half an hour, 10 minutes, in a supermarket for an hour. But we supported it from the school. We did not expect the supermarket to do that. We were the specialists. So we had behavior management programs. We had tokens. We used token training to get, and for some of the young people, brilliant, worked really well. For other young people, it did not work so well, and their behavior would have prevented them from getting a job. They would not go into employment. They had severe behavior problems. They wouldn't. But we did get progress with quite a few, but I used the behavioral management programs with specific goals, specific targets, and we did it in school, and then we gradually put it into the real world and took people out, and some children did very well and went on into employment. But not everyone. Not everyone. Well, I wish it were everyone, but not everyone.
Thank you, Professor. Baik, saya bantu jelaskan tadi ya, meskipun mungkin sudah paham, saya bantu jelaskan untuk yang lain. Tadi beliau menjelaskan terkait program transisi khususnya ke dunia kerja. Secara peraturan, prosedur nampaknya sangat mudah, tapi kenyataannya sangat sulit, very challenging. Pertama, dari sekolah luar biasa atau sekolah khusus, mereka kemungkinan besar akan dibantu organisasi charity, berarti mungkin LSM, bukan organisasi pemerintah, untuk menempatkan mereka bekerja. Tapi pilihannya sangat terbatas, entah di kasir, entah tadi customer service dan seterusnya, jadi sangat terbatas pilihannya. Untuk manajemen perilaku tadi juga dilaksanakan di sekolah, dengan contoh tadi mungkin diajak ke supermarket untuk mencoba untuk berinteraksi dan seterusnya, tapi dalam prakteknya itu juga merupakan bukan hal yang mudah begitu ya, cukup challenging juga. Mungkin seperti itu. I think that's yeah. Alright, okay, we still have one last questions, alright? Oke, silakan.
Terima kasih. Selamat sore, Prof. Karen. Saya Muklis dari jurusan Teknik Mesin. Sudah selayaknya setiap orang mendapatkan akses pendidikan yang sama, sebab pendidikan itu tidak dibatasi oleh ruang dan waktu, serta prosesnya berlangsung sepanjang hayat. Terkait pendidikan inklusif tersebut, di sini saya juga melihat upaya dari pemerintah maupun pihak yang bersangkutan terkait penanganan akan hal itu. Dan yang ingin saya tanyakan di sini, apakah kita yang memposisikan diri sebagai mahasiswa mempunyai peran di dalam pendidikan inklusif tersebut? Jikalau ada, apa dan yang bisa dilakukan oleh kita yang di sini berlaku atau berperan sebagai mahasiswa? Terima kasih, Prof.
Terima kasih banyak. So his question is, he is a huge supporter of inclusive education. He understands that everyone has the right to access education. Now he is wondering what he could do at this moment as a student to support the inclusive education. Do you have any idea? No?
Yes.
All right, let's go.
Oh, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. So, I mean, I think one thing to do, and mechanical engineering, just mechanical engineering. So I would say make contact with an organization, a support organization or advocacy organization, and talk to them. They will be delighted to hear from you. And in 5 years' time, when you are in charge of a massive factory, you will be in a position of influence and you will have friends who are in disability activist groups, and that is the way to go, I think. Make friends first now, and then as your career blossoms, you will be able to do good.
That's a very good answer actually.
Long vision.
That's fine. Oke, tadi beliau menyarankan untuk teman-teman mahasiswa yang ingin berkontribusi lebih baik untuk pendidikan inklusif bisa bergabung pada beberapa organisasi atau komunitas yang mengadvokasi hak-hak disabilitas. Beliau tadi menyampaikan mungkin sekarang baru perkenalan, tapi 5 tahun ke depan ini akan memperluas jejaring teman-teman terhadap komunitas disabilitas. Ya, seperti itu. Oke. Right. Thank you, Professor Kiran. Boleh beli tepuk tangan sekali lagi untuk Prof. Kiran. And also congratulations. So you'll be a grandfather very soon. That's very nice. Alright, silakan Prof. Budi.
Halo, aduh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable my Vice Rector, Bapak Dr. Sujarwanto, and my best friend from UK, Professor Kiran Sehi from Open University, and then Professor Joanna Kosman from Pedagogy Poland. Hello, thank you for your sharing and presentation now. And then Olli Pekka Melin from Helsinki University, Finland, and especially for your participant, teman-teman mahasiswa yang luar biasa yang bergabung pada sore hari ini. Terima kasih atas perhatian dan kehadirannya pada momen yang luar biasa ini. Sesuai dengan schedule, saya ditugasi bukan untuk presentasi, tapi I'm not presenter now, only preaching your material. Saya hanya menjembatani apa yang disampaikan presenter pada sore hari ini. Namun nampaknya ini menjadi pekerjaan yang berat bagi saya. Ini tugas dari Pak WR4 pada kita, kalau itu bantu Mas Asar nggih. Thank you very much for your presentation. So very open my mind, and then how to be implemented in Indonesia, your best practices all. Yang saya pikirkan kan adalah dari pengalaman baik, praktek baik yang disampaikan ketiga presenter kita, ujung-ujungnya adalah bagaimana mengimplementasikan di Indonesia. And now in Indonesian, policy government to the first for expand to survive inclusive education. Jadi kebijakan pemerintah dalam pelaksanaan pendidikan inklusif yang pertama adalah perluasan akses, and then continue to be implement to increase quality education. The first, perluasan akses. Second, and now in Indonesia, sekarang di Indonesia sudah memiliki 40.000 lebih sekolah inklusi untuk pendidikan dasar dan menengah. Dari 3.900-an. Dari 3.900, dari 300, bentar datanya. Dari 394.000 sekolah. Maybe juga 10%. Yeah. Now, but in higher education, di tingkat perguruan tinggi, sekarang ini data di Balitbank ada 184 perguruan tinggi yang sudah menerima atau memberikan layanan pada mahasiswa disabilitas. Celakanya 184 itu dari jumlah perguruan tinggi di Indonesia, yaitu sekitar 3.300. Jadi masih sekitar 2,5%, 2,5%. Artinya untuk tingkat perguruan tinggi kita masih sekitar 2,5%. Nah, selanjutnya yang kami pikirkan, dari presentasi ketiga narasumber kita dapat kita kelompokkan menjadi dua. Yang pertama adalah sudah masuk ke ranah peningkatan mutu layanan pendidikan. Seperti yang dipresentasikan Prof. Joanna, juga Mr. Alik PK PhD, itu lebih fokus bagaimana praktek baik yang dilakukan di Poland untuk memberikan layanan pada anak autis. So that's a real best practice for me. Selanjutnya begitu pula yang disampaikan oleh Bapak Michael PhD, orientasinya juga sudah untuk peningkatan mutu. Nah, artinya termasuk sebagian yang dipresentasikan Prof. Kiran, ini adalah really best practice for me. But now I think what to do implemented in Indonesia. Teman-teman yang luar biasa, terkait data yang disampaikan Prof. Kiran, ini memicu kita untuk memikirkan bagaimana strategi perluasan akses. Orientasinya adalah bagaimana agar semua anak negeri ini segera mendapatkan layanan pendidikan sesuai haknya. Artinya the first is expand, serve for all students. Because my percentage is very low. And the second, we move to. Nah, terkait dengan perluasan akses tadi, ada best practices yang disampaikan Prof. Kiran terkait dengan data-data yang dideskripsikan dari berbagai negara. Thank you for your data. Dan saya tahu persis bahwa ya data yang ditayangkan Prof. Kiren ini adalah hasil penelitian beliau. Karena pada tahun 2011 beliau melakukan penelitian bagaimana pendidikan bagi peserta didik berkebutuhan khusus atau disability di dunia di 55 negara. Penelitian beliau di 55 negara. Dan 15 negara diantaranya dia kunjungi langsung ke negaranya. Dan kebetulan pada waktu beliau riset ke Jepang, kebetulan saya sedang di sana juga mengadakan riset, maka saya ketemu dengan beliau. In 2011. First time I meet for. Nah, data-data itu nampaknya yang perlu kita pikirkan bersama menjadi pemikiran bagaimana strategi perluasan akses yang dapat kita lakukan di Indonesia. Dari hasil-hasil ini, kami berharap Mas Hasan nanti materinya bisa digandung kita. Selanjutnya kita pelajari secara mendalam agar kita dapat menyusun sebuah rekomendasi yang barangkali kita bisa sampaikan kepada government dalam konteks perluasan akses dan peningkatan mutu pendidikan di Indonesia. Itu best practice yang dapat kita ambil yang pertama yang terkait dengan perluasan akses adalah data-data yang disampaikan Prof. Kiren tadi bahwa kita tidak perlu melihat sesuatu itu harus begini, harus begini, harus begini. Karena kenyataan data di dunia bermacam-macam. Masing-masing mempunyai culture, masing-masing negara mempunyai budaya, masing-masing negara mempunyai potensi yang tidak sama. Bagaimana kita menganalisis dari kondisi real yang ada di kita untuk percepatan akses pendidikan bagi semua, ini adalah kata kuncinya. Dan materi-materi yang disampaikan dari Prof. Kiren tadi akan dapat membantu bagi kita, terutama untuk menjelaskan pada para pemegang kebijakan. Kenapa? Karena para pemegang kebijakan di bidang pendidikan kita cenderung apabila yang dia tahu X, maka ya orientasinya pada X doang. Sementara data yang disajikan Prof. Kiren tadi sangat bervariasi pola implementasi pendidikan inklusif tersebut antara negara yang satu dengan negara yang lain. Masing-masing menghargai culture dari negaranya, sehingga itu bisa berjalan dengan baik. Satu lagi yang perlu menjadi catatan, terutama Mas Hasan yang nanti gimana kita rumuskan ini, bahkan di kalangan rumah kita sendiri, dalam artian di perguruan tinggi, masih banyak kita temukan teman dosen yang mengatakan kalau tidak X berarti tidak inklusi. Kan gitu. Nah ini data yang disampaikan Prof. Kiren menjadi membuka mata kita. Tidak. Inclusive education is philosophy. Inclusive education is the new philosophy in the century. So prakteknya itu masing-masing negara disesuaikan dengan kemampuan, kondisi, dan culture-nya tadi. Oke, ini sementara catatan pertama yang terkait dengan perluasan akses. Sedangkan yang berkait dengan peningkatan mutu dari ketiga presenter kita, dari Prof. Joanna, tadi secara spesifik bagaimana memberikan layanan untuk autism spectrum disorder kita. Artinya itu kita tinggal copy saja, nanti sekolah yang kualifikasi mana yang sudah mampu melaksanakan seperti itu. Begitu juga yang disampaikan oleh PK Meliam PhD, itu juga sudah praktis bagaimana memberikan layanan agar kualitas pendidikan layanan di kelas itu menjadi meningkat. Mulai sistem pengelolaan kelas, penataan materinya, dan seterusnya. Saya kira ini yang perlu kita renungkan bersama. Dan bagi teman-teman mahasiswa, ini adalah kesempatan yang baik bagi teman-teman untuk ambil bagian dalam kerangka perluasan akses dan peningkatan mutu pendidikan yang inklusif tersebut. Konteks perluasan akses teman-teman, pada saat teman-teman juga sudah memberikan kesempatan, memfasilitasi teman-teman kita yang disabilitas, ini sebenarnya Anda sudah melakukan itu. Nah selanjutnya dari seperti teman-teman dari teknik tadi yang bertanya, apa yang dapat kita lakukan? Di era sekarang, di dalam pembelajaran anak berkebutuhan khusus atau disabilitas, ini sudah tidak bisa lepas dari teknologi asistif. Nah, teman-teman semua bisa membantu bagaimana memudahkan pembelajaran bagi ini dengan meng-create teknologi yang sekarang ada. Kalau kita berbicara teknologi asistif, tidak berarti itu yang higher technology, tidak hanya itu. Barangkali hanya meng-create sesuatu yang real, tetapi ini benar-benar lalu memberikan kemudahan bagi saudara kita, teman kita yang disabilitas, ini sudah teknologi. Oke, artinya ini juga menjadi terbuka peluang bagi teman-teman semua. Nah, saya kira ini yang dapat saya komunikasikan sesuai dengan tugas. Berarti Bapak Presenter sudah selesai, tugas saya belum selesai jadinya ini. Nah, selanjutnya sekali lagi kami untuk menyusun bridging ini nanti mohon bantuan Prof. Kiran untuk selalu discuss komunikasi why to implemented in Indonesia. Oke, thank you very much. Terima kasih Mas Asar, terima kasih Pak WR4 yang telah memberikan kesempatan ini, dan terima kasih kepada teman-teman semua yang sudah bergabung ini. Dan satu hal yang saya tekankan terakhir adalah teman-teman sekarang sudah terlanjur tahu. Ya. Bagi teman-teman yang Muslim itu terkena ketentuan. Wajib itu berlaku bagi yang sudah tahu. Dan sekarang teman-teman sudah terlanjur tahu. Artinya, oke, simpulkan sendiri. Bila taufiq wal hidayah, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Boleh beri plus yang sangat meriah untuk Profesor Budianto. Baik, dengan berakhirnya sesi Profesor Budi, berarti berakhir pula sesi kita untuk international webinar pada siang sampai sore hari ini. Saya tidak akan menyimpulkan Prof, karena sudah disimpulkan dengan sangat luar biasa oleh Prof. Budi. Terima kasih untuk kesempatan belajarnya. Terima kasih untuk Bapak WR4 telah memberikan kesempatan. Teman-teman Humas, Prof. Kiran, once again thank you so much for your time. Ya. Prof. Budi, terima kasih banyak for two speakers there. Thank you so much for your time. Terima kasih untuk seluruh mahasiswa. Saya selaku moderator mohon maaf apabila ada salah kata dan perbuatan. Saya perlu kembalikan ke MC? Oh, tidak perlu. Baik. Langsung saya tutup rekan-rekan mahasiswa. Selamat melanjutkan UTS-nya. Baik. Sampai jumpa di sesi-sesi selanjutnya. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.